There was nothing happening. It was really like a wasteland. There was no businesses. It was not trendy. But I figured, okay, I see the potential. I knew it was on the waterfront. And like my grandmother, I just wanted something to call my own.
You're listening to Financial Grown Up with me, certified financial planner Bobbi Rebell, author of How to Be a Financial Grown Up. And you know what? Being a grown up is really hard, especially when it comes to money. But it's okay. We're going to get there together. I'm going to bring you one money story from a financial grown up, one lesson, and then my take on how you can make it your own. We got this. Have you ever been set up as a mentor for someone and pretty quickly realized that you had the wrong name tag on and they should be the mentor? Well, that is what happened with our guest today, Jamila Souffrant of Journey to Launch. We were paired up at FinCon last fall. That's a conference for people who create content about money. At the time, her podcast was just starting up. That's all of a few months ago. Now she's a familiar face at the top charts at Apple Podcasts. Here is Jamilas Souffrant. Jamilas Souffrant, welcome. You are a financial grown-up. I'm so excited you're here.
I'm excited to be here, Bobbi.
And we have a special bond because we were connected through FinCon, where I signed up to be a mentor, and we were matched up, especially because you are doing a lot of really cool stuff in the media. You have an awesome website called Journey to Launch. And also you were nominated for Best New Podcast. So congratulations. Tell us about that.
Thank you. So I started Journey to Launch originally just to be a sounding board for my personal journey to reach financial freedom and independence. I created a goal in which I wanted to retire early, quit my corporate job. And I said, if I put it on the internet, it will make it happen because I'd have to be accountable. And as I started to share my story, people wanted to hear more and learn how I was saving as much as I was saving and doing what I was doing. And so I turned it more into how can I help others, which is what I'm doing now. So I do that through the blog. I do that through coaching. And then the podcast, which I started a little over 6 months ago now, is really has been my main driving force of delivering content and information about how to reach financial freedom, practical tips and steps, and then, of course, sharing my journey along the way.
And your journey, just tell us a little bit about that, because you've got kids, you've got another one on the way, you've got a full-time job, a husband. There's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on. So I have a full-time job still, but I do Journey to Launch as my second full-time job. And it's really my passion. It's something I hope to do full-time one day. But I'm married. I have 2 small kids, 3.5, 1.5, and expecting. And so as you can imagine, Bobbi, my life is pretty hectic.
One thing that I did as a young adult, and I talk about this in my book, is I bought real estate at a very young age. But I was already out of college. You were thinking about this your senior year in college. Tell me your financial grown-up story.
When I was in college, I got this bright idea that I wanted to own real estate. And I'll tell you how I got this idea. So I am a daughter of an immigrant. My mother and grandmother came here from Jamaica, the island, when I was young. What my grandmother managed to do with as little as she had was save up enough over the years. Now, it took her a while to do it, but to save up enough to buy a home. I witnessed that. I witnessed the hard work she did. I witnessed the hard work my mother did. And she bought a home actually in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. So if anyone, maybe if you're not familiar, Fort Greene, Brooklyn is really nowadays, it's like, one of the most trendiest places to live in Brooklyn. But back then when she bought it, it wasn't really that desirable. So she did get it at a good price. And so while I was growing up, I saw that. And by the time I hit college, the real estate market was booming. And my grandmother, who knows nothing about real estate, became like this little real estate mogul. So for me, that was such a turning point. And I said to myself, I want to be able to do that. If my grandmother can do this, I surely, with all, the platform I was given from their hard work, can do something. And so when I was in college, I started thinking about, okay, I want to buy something. And I wanted to buy a brownstone in Fort Greene or Bed-Stuy, where I was accustomed to living for most of my life. The only reason I even thought I could do this was I had a well-paying internship where I had started to save 90% of my checks.
So you weren't out partying with a buddy?
Right. So for like 4 years, I had this internship. I was saving everything. So I had a good chunk of money while I was in college. So that's what gave me the bright idea that this was even going to be possible. But I just couldn't afford anything. I saw this advertisement for this new development, like in DUMBO, Brooklyn, which at the time was not the DUMBO. DUMBO stands for Down Under the Manhattan Bridge Overpass for anyone who's not in New York. And at the time when I was looking to buy it, it was not the DUMBO it is today. And I saw an advertisement and they had condos that started like in the mid 300s, which for still at that time was a lot for me, but it was way less than a brownstone. And so pre-construction, I went to the office with my mom and saw, the layout and all these plans. And really, again, DUMBO was not what it is today. There was nothing happening. It was really like a wasteland. There was no businesses. It was not trendy. But I figured, okay, I see the potential. I knew it was on the waterfront. And like my grandmother, I just wanted something to call my own. And so I put down to save the cheapest apartment. So on the list, it was the cheapest apartment that I could afford or that they had available. I put down my 10%, which is what I had at the time. And they said in 2 years, so it's going to take about 2 years to build this condo. You're going to need to have your additional 10% and you're going to need to have your closing costs. But I knew that I was graduating from college at the time. So I knew that I was going to have a job because where I interned offered me a full-time job. And my mother, being gracious and just being so supportive, she was like, you can live with me as long as you want. Just save all your money so you can do this. And so I graduated with my job. I had this now, contract in place where this apartment would be mine as long as I could close on it. Bless my mom, she also actually gifted me. So as much as she didn't have, she still was able to give me a couple $1,000s to help with the first 10%, which was amazing.
It is amazing. And I'm glad that you took it because a lot of people think it's not a grown-up move to take money from your parents, especially early in life like that. Take the money if they can afford it, please. They want you to be financially independent.
Right. It was also like she was so proud. Like my mom was a single mom. I don't know if I mentioned that. So she was a single mom. She had me at 20 and she worked her butt off when she came here, like, 2 minimum wage jobs, went to school. And so for her, even just giving me a couple $1,000s to help towards this down payment of like this home was one of her biggest, it was like a proud moment for her. So she helped me in that way. And then she also helped me because I was able to live with her while I saved up enough money to put the other 10% down at closing in 2 years and the closing costs. So,
and by the way, wait, I just want to point out, living with your parents to save money for a down payment purposefully with a deadline is also a very grown-up thing to do that a lot of people may look down on because they think, oh, I'm living with my parents. That's not a grown-up thing. It is absolutely. If you have a purpose with a deadline like that, do it.
By the time I was ready to close, I had the money saved. I had an extra buffer also saved to be able to, cover anything I couldn't cover with my income. But I also knew that I was a hard worker and that I would be able to make more money in my job as I went along, which is what happened. So things got a little bit more comfortable. And so that has been my biggest, not only financial risk, but my biggest financial success because now DUMBO is one of the most expensive places to own real estate in New York.
Do you still own the apartment?
I still own the apartment.
Wow.
And I rent it out and I'll probably never sell it, even though I've gotten offers for people to buy it. But for me, it's such an emotional attachment so it's really not even a business move at this point. It's just an emotional attachment of this is what I was able to accomplish. And you know what? Maybe this is where my husband and I retire to. Maybe this is what I want to give my kids if they want to live there and share, a room if they're going to school in the city. I don't know, but I want to be able to have this in my family as part of my legacy.
I love that story. Okay, so what is your lesson?
So my lesson is to not make your circumstance determine your course of action or what you can do in life. Because, again, I wasn't born into money. And even at the time when I found this opportunity, I was not necessarily prepared for it. But I knew that I knew what I wanted out of life. And so despite not necessarily having all the money right away, I knew that if I worked hard enough, if I was smart about it, I could save, I could accumulate the money to be able to accomplish this. And so I would say, despite wherever you are in your life, with your finances, with your circumstances, despite how you grew up, you can make changes, you can do something different.
Give us a personal money tip. I feel like you probably have something really good that you and your family do that maybe our listeners can put into action right away.
Okay, so this is really, really simple and seems like not a big deal. But whenever we go out, I do not order. If it's a non-alcoholic drinks, I do not buy outside. Like there's no way. So, you sit down at a restaurant and they ask you if you want tap or sparkling. Tap will do just fine. I don't mind. I don't feel, cheap or whatever when they ask me that. Sodas, things like that. Things that to me, like I can get at the store for $1 or 50 cents. I'm not going to buy at a restaurant for $4. And again, it seems so small, but it's really not about the price. It's more about the principle and then just training your mind to be intentional and just stop those little leaks of money when you don't have to really spend it.
I also think it sets a really good example for children if when you go to meals, you just have water. And I know my son has gotten used to just having water because it's healthier also.
Yeah, that's another thing. And that's probably the best reason. It's just, healthier.
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you so much. You've been a wonderful guest. I feel like I learned a lot and I'm so proud of you. I'm excited to come visit you in 30 years in that apartment and see how it's going because I feel like you're going to hang on to that thing forever and it's a good thing. So thank you.
Thanks, Bobby.
Here's my take on Jamila's real estate story. A lot of people are wary about buying real estate very young because they don't know where they are going to be or they don't have the money. But I'm a big fan of owning real estate to live in or as an investment or both. In fact, as I talk about in my book, How to Be a Financial Grown-Up, I bought my first apartment at age 23. Here are some ways you can make it work if you also want to be an owner at a young age. Financial grown-up tip number 1, focus on flexibility. If you're buying and you are young, try to focus on properties that you can live in or can use as investment properties. If you are living in it, consider places that are either extremely small and affordable to you so you don't have the pressure of overhead, or that have room for a roommate so you can have someone paying rent to subsidize your expenses. If it's an investment, think like Jamila and look for an affordable area that is likely to appreciate. I know, easier said than done, but what she did with DUMBO in Brooklyn is not unique. But you do have to take the time and you do have to do the work. Financial grown-up tip number 2, focus on saving a solid down payment and having a very strong financial foundation. To get that down payment, Jamila was saving for years. She also lived at home. She put everything into that one goal. You may not want to live at home, but if you have that option, consider it. I lived at home right out of college, banked my money to help save for my first apartment's down payment. If it is an available option, think about it. Another way to save, get a side hustle and just funnel all that money into your down payment fund. It takes hard work, but people like Jamila Souffrant work hard, and yes, they do sacrifice. Thank you all so much for listening to Financial Grown Up. The feedback has been such a blessing. I truly appreciate it all. Please continue to rate and review the show, especially on Apple Podcasts, but anywhere is good. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Journey to Launch's Jamilas Souffrant and that we all got one step closer to being financial grown-ups. Financial Grown-Up with Bobby Rebell is edited and produced by Steve Stewart and is a BRK Media production.